This is the video for 2.3 notes section, slides 17 and 18. All right, so it says find dy dx. All right, so y equals 2 minus 5x plus 3 tangent x. All right, so we've got three things added or subtracted together, so we're just going to take the derivative of each term separately. All right, so derivative of 2 is 0, minus the derivative of 5x, which is just 5, plus 3 tangent x. All right, so that would be 3 times the derivative of tangent x, which is secant squared of x. That's it. And you probably wouldn't have to write the 0. All right. But then moving on, all right, this one. Now, there's two ways that you could do this. You could consider this as a quotient rule, right, which would be u divided by v, or you could rewrite this y as 6 cosecant of x. All right, so if you do that, either way, right, you're going to get the same answer, or answers that are equivalent. They look different, but here's dy dx. All right, so if I consider the quotient rule, I would have sine x, right? So denominator times the derivative of the numerator, which is 0, minus numerator sine of x times the derivative of, excuse me, sorry, minus the numerator, which is 6, times the derivative of the denominator. Derivative of sine is cosine x, all divided by the denominator, sine squared of x. All right, so that's one version. Now, obviously, sine times 0, so this would be negative 6 cosine x over sine squared x, right? So you could have that version of the derivative, right? Now, what if I considered y equals 6 cosecant? Well, what would its derivative be? Well, dy dx then would be 6 times the derivative of cosecant. What's the derivative of cosecant? Well, that is negative cosecant x cotangent x. Right now, these two are actually equal, right? If you think about negative 6 cosine over sine squared, this is really negative 6 times cosine x, right? And then divided by sine of x times sine of x, right? But sine of x times sine of x, well, I could split that up into negative 6 times cosine x over sine x times 1 over sine x. And you know that cosine over sine is cotangent x, and 1 over sine is cosecant x. And so I have negative 6 cotangent times cosecant, or cosecant times cotangent. So either way, I get the same value. But changing to 6 cosecant was far easier to get to that result, and that would be the more likely result in terms of like a multiple choice. All right, so that's slide 17. All right, slide 18, a little bit more practice. All right, number 3, y equals sine over 1 plus cosine. Okay, now it's important to remember there are two terms in the denominator. You cannot split this up into two fractions added together. You have to use the quotient rule here. All right, so dy dx. Remember, quotient rule says to take the denominator times the derivative of the numerator. All right, so denominator is 1 plus cosine times the derivative of the numerator. Derivative of sine is cosine x, minus, now we have sine of x times the derivative of 1 plus cosine. So derivative of 1 is 0, plus derivative of cosine is negative sine x, all divided by the denominator, 1 plus cosine x quantity squared. All right, so now I'm going to simplify a little bit. I've got 1 plus cosine times cosine, so I'm going to distribute the cosine, and I get cosine x plus cosine squared x. And then I have a minus sign times a minus sign, so that would become a plus sine squared x, all divided by 1 plus, sorry about that, 1 plus cosine x quantity squared. All right, so now another thing to remember, cosine squared plus sine squared, that is the Pythagorean identity. And so that is equal to 1. All right, sorry, my tablet is giving me some issues today. All right, and so we replace this with 1. All right, and so I have cosine x plus 1 over 1 plus cosine x squared, right? But remember, cosine x plus 1 over 1 plus cosine x, we can actually reduce. And so I am left with 1 over 1 plus cosine x. All right, the next one. Okay, so now I have two terms once again. All right, but the second term is a product. So I'm going to take the derivative. All right. So I take the derivative of each term separately. So derivative of 6 is 0. So then plus derivative of x cubed times cosine x. All right, so now we need the product rule. X cubed times the derivative of cosine, which is negative sine of x, plus cosine x times the derivative of x cubed, which is 3x squared. All right, and so then this is what I have. I would rewrite it with negative x cubed sine of x plus 3x squared cosine x. All right, now, not really much you could do other than maybe you could factor out an x squared. So you could write like x squared times negative x sine x plus 3 cosine x. But that doesn't really change it at all. You haven't simplified, you've just rewritten it. So that would be dy dx. All right, so that is slide 18.